Thanks, Rusty. Another special welcome to all of you. All of you in this audience are very special to us, and we're simply delighted that you're here this evening. In order to recognize demonstrated leadership in one's chosen profession, appointed or elected, that is clearly exemplary and worthy of emulation, the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation established the John A. Lejeune Award for Exemplary Leadership. The recipient must epitomize the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, and practice the leadership traits and principles ascribed to and by General John A. Lejeune and our Corps. Now, total transparency is certainly in vogue today, so I must begin with a confession. I sought the task this evening of introducing Senator Glenn. Well, to be totally honest, I told General Blackman I was going to do it. Why? Because I admire this Marine so much, and to have the privilege of introducing him is very special to me. But after I was awarded the task, I began to wonder, how in the world are you going to be able to capture the essence of this great American in a few brief moments? I finally decided to just let the record speak for itself, and to divide that record into three parts: Marine, astronaut, senator, public servant. I ask you to listen to the record. Put it together in your mind, and then try to understand the enormity of it. Marine. Following Pearl Harbor, left college, enlisted in the Naval Aviation Cadet Program, and was commissioned in 1943. During World War II, flew 59 combat missions in the South Pacific. During the Korean conflict, flew 63 missions with Marine Fighter Squadron 3, 11, and 27 missions as an exchange with the Air Force. In 1954, on assignment as test pilot, and in 1957 set a transcontinental speed record for the first flight to average supersonic speeds from Los Angeles to New York. His awards include the Distinguished Flying Cross 6 times. You heard me right, 6 times. The Air Medal with 18 clusters for combat service. Astronaut. In 1959, selected to be one of 7 NASA Mercury astronauts from an original pool of 508. February 20, 1962, first American to orbit the Earth, completing 3 orbits and a 5-hour flight. Returned to space from October 29 to November 7, 1998, as a member of NASA's Space Shuttle Discovery mission, supporting 83 research payloads and investigation on space flight and aging. The oldest person to have flown in space. I'll answer the question that's in your mind. He was 77 years old. Senator. In 1974, elected to the U.S. Senate, carrying all 88 counties in Ohio. Reelected in 1980 with the largest margin of votes in Ohio history. Reelected for the third time in 1986. Made history again in 1992 by being the first popularly elected senator from Ohio to win 4 consecutive terms. Retired from the Senate at the end of his term in 1999. Married Annie Margaret Castor in 1943, perhaps the most important thing you ever did, Senator. Awarded the Congressional Space Medal of Honor, the Congressional Gold Medal, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, as the enormity of it all, the courage, the honor, the commitment to our nation come together for you. I know it has. And I know you understand why the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation and the hundreds of thousands of Marines who comprise it are so honored to present the John A. Lejeune Leadership Award to Senator John Glenn. Sir.
Circle you up here, sir.
Okay.
Sir, congratulations.
Thank you.
You absolutely honor us here tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Thank you, General Boomer, and appreciate the Commandant being here this evening. Thank you so much. You know, it's difficult to respond to an introduction like that sometimes. It's a little like a dinner Annie and I attended back home in Ohio not too long ago, and the person introducing me got all carried away and gave accomplishments I never dreamed of having, and finished up by saying, "There are few truly great men in this world." And then he introduced me. Now that's rather heady, and I guess going home that night I was still thinking about it, and I said, Annie, you know, if you think about it, there aren't very many truly great men in this world. And it took her about 2 seconds to say, "Let me tell you something, there's sure one less than you think there is." General Boomer mentioned my age when I went into space last, and Annie and I are now, we're not ashamed of it, we're into our 90s now and still going, but this age thing is something that I seem to be the focal point of some emails on, and I get a kick out of some of the jokes that people do send in. The one I got a kick out of one that said a gentleman started to drive from his home downtown, and he was gone, an elderly gentleman. He's gone about 10 minutes. His wife calls him on the phone and says, "Oh, Fred, please be careful, because I saw on TV where there's a car driving the wrong way on the freeway." And he said, "There's not one, Mary, there are hundreds of them." And I won't take all evening here and keep us late by just telling jokes, but one or two more anyway. Said the reason they wouldn't let me go out on a spacewalk is because they were really afraid that at my age I might wander off someplace. And the three elderly Marines were walking out across the ramp. And you know, your faculties, your ability to hear, see, and everything does sort of decrease as you get older. And they're walking across the ramp, and the first one says, "It's windy." And the second one said, "No, it's Thursday." And the third one said, "Me too, let's go get a beer." I guess the one I liked best of all was a letter, an actual letter. 9-year-old boy in Illinois, and this is an actual letter. I am not making any of this up at all. And he starts out, says hi, and he gives his name. He's in a school, and he wanted to know more about space, and so he was writing this letter to me. And he comes down there. They're supposed to pick somebody, and then he comes down and he says this at the end, that I'm glad you're still alive because a lot of my classmates' biography choices are already dead. I hope you write back. That pretty much capped it, I guess. Before I have a couple of other remarks here, I do want to give credit to someone people who are responsible for my being here tonight. As you get older, sometimes you have to take the doctor's advice on some things, and Andy and I are coming back from some little difficulties, and we're okay, but the recommendation was that I not drive in and all the way from Ohio for this evening. But a very good friend of ours really jumped into the breach on that one, and he's an excellent pilot himself and has a couple of executive jet airplanes. And when we said that we could leave Columbus about 4 o'clock, be here, and be back home again tonight, why, the doctors agreed. They thought that was okay and no problem at all. So Louis Beck is a good friend of ours, and without him, I would have had to bow out tonight. So Louis, we appreciate your help. And Pedro Aguilera helps Louis fly the airplane, as we did coming in this afternoon. And another good friend of ours who came along with us was Jack Kessler. Where you at, Jack? Over here. Many thanks to the Heritage Foundation. They say they keep alive the best of the past, not just as dry history, but as a guide to the future. And that we can appreciate that. It's the Lejeune Award has a special meaning to me because it comes from people I feel are colleagues, fellow Marines. And that makes it ever more meaningful than any other award. It truly does. The Marine Corps is unique. It is, and it is unique in a couple of particular ways. It's our nation's ready force, number one. And number two, it has all elements of supporting arms. We don't have to call somebody else for tanks or whatever it is. And we have every bit of what is required to represent our country wherever those interests may lie. And there are mortars and artillery and intelligence and tanks and air assets and air cover over a battle area and transportation and close air support and all the things that go into making this Corps a unit ready to go. It's a ready force. It's 911. You don't have to call on other people. And if we ever lose that kind of readiness in the Marine Corps, we'll have lost one of our key reasons for being. And I think that's a very important thing. I know General Amos fights with these things every day in Washington, trying to make sure the Corps is ready to go. But if a president decides that we need a force in some area, then the Marine Corps is the organization that is ready and willing, ready to go, and can have some units underway, moving within a 24-hour period. And nobody else could make that kind of claim. And this has been the Marine Corps' heritage since clear back from Tun Tavern days on. And we need to remember that, I think. But you know, some of our war needs have changed. And while we still need that ability to go into active combat as we've known in the past, of troops fighting in front lines and artillery and advancing and so on, and there's close air support and one force arrayed against another, some of that is changing. And as instead of being just territory that we're trying to take and take somebody else's capital, it has changed somewhat. And as one of the writers said not too long ago, our emphasis in combat may be shifting or adding to, at least, the requirement for conventional forces, but the new requirement for the future will also be to deal with not with country, but cause. Not country, but cause. In other words, we're not just taking territory now, but we're dealing with people who don't wish us well, but who don't have tanks arrayed against us, but they can be just as deadly, as we know from 9/11. And so the Marine Corps has to be organized for that also. And that's very difficult, because they can use some of the remote geography that, while being claimed by a country, is not actually controlled by a country. And so we saw some of these resources develop out of Pakistan. And when things got a little different in Pakistan, they went to Yemen, and a remote area of Yemen, and that got a little bit dicey, and so they can move some of their stuff to Somalia. And so it makes a whole different problem if you're going to represent this country. And they've identified 26 other areas around the world that are remote enough and not controlled enough by the country that claims them, that Al-Qaeda and their affiliates can use those areas for their headquarters and do their planning without the need for tanks and airplanes and so on. And we have to be able to deal with that as well as everything else. So there are new challenges for this 911 force that we're so proud of. Along with this has been a lot of new technology. Who would ever thought people maneuvering out there in the field with GPS and telling you right down to the foot where your units are all across a battlefield area? And we've had some of the equipment is our equipment like the Osprey, and where we can bring things to bear from twice the distance, twice as far, twice as fast as ever before. And those are important things. They change the nature of what you can do with our Marine Corps. And we have all the other developments that we have that are technical developments. I was fortunate not long ago to be out in San Diego and be able to get briefed and all on the Marine Landing Platform. This is a ship that will enable Marines now to have a supply base and a maintenance facility just offshore, and it's a huge thing. It's longer than 2 football fields and about the same width as a football field. It's a very unusual ship in that it will, while the wheelhouse and one end is at one end on the stern of the ship, the other end is the bow, sticks up, but they can sink this like a dry dock partway down, and across the great mid-deck put a flat area that can be 15 feet underwater. And this can be a place where landing craft and hovercraft and all can come back and get resupplied and give a Marine force ashore a far greater capability and sustaining power to keep them there longer, if necessary, than was ever possible before. And so there are things like that going on that will make the Marine Corps even more effective in the future and more necessary. The air combat changes have occurred. And we think about that clear, if we think about it really, for instance, on fighter aircraft, we fought through World War II and the Korean War with tactics that were basically designed and used in World War I. World War I. We mounted guns that would shoot forward, so you had to go maneuver around somebody else if you wanted to shoot down that airplane or stop the bombers coming in or whatever. And it wasn't until the end of Korea and the beginning of Vietnam that we began to have missiles that would do some of that maneuvering for us. So that's been a change also. But the Marine Corps' greatest asset does not lie in those things, in technology and equipment. It lies in the people in the Marine Corps, the people. And they are the best. They're the greatest. It starts with recruiting. I've always been proud of Marine Corps recruiting, which doesn't promise a lot of things for me. It says basically has through the years reflected two things. Do you want to serve your country? Number one. And number two, do you think you're good enough? Do you think you have the qualifications and the dedication to join this very special, this very elite group? Starts in training, starts in boot camp, which people are put through. They're not really Marines yet. They're not called Marines yet. They're not authorized to wear the globe and anchor yet until they prove themselves in boot camp and with the crucible at the end of it. So it's a proving type thing, and it's a big day when they can finally pin those things on. I had my first CO, the first squadron I reported to out of flight school. Our skipper, a man named Pete Haynes, who died a long time ago. But Pete Haynes, in a discussion one day, said, Marine training makes a person more afraid of letting their buddies down than they are of getting hurt themselves. And I think that is very, very true. And every service would like to have that kind of attitude, but I think the Marines have it beyond what anyone else has. And this is that's what wins battles in combat. When we're in combat, it's not flags flying and bands waving, as so many of us in this room know. It's a time when the important things to you then are the person to the right of you, the left of you, or the airplane to the right of you, and those you're flying with. And this is that kind of dedication toward those people and willingness to sacrifice for those you're with, actually is what wins battles. Well, what has this resulted in through the years? It's resulted in things like Marine success at Belleau Wood back in World War I. We celebrate that. My dad was a corporal in the Army in World War I, and he had heard about the Marine Corps over there, even though he was in the Army. And he joked when I was in the Marine Corps about us being Teufelhund. Teufelhund. That's German for devil hound, devil dog. And that's where the term devil dog came from as applied to the Marine Corps, because of the tenacity and the willingness to enter into the most serious combat situations of any group over there. And it goes on out of Belleau Wood, and then we come to things like Wake Island and Midway and Guadalcanal and Tarawa and Okinawa, and the most notable of all, as we went up that island chain during World War II, is reflected in the motto up here: uncommon valor was a common virtue. And this very building reflects that, in that the general shape is the same as that, the statue, the Iwo statue in Washington, that has that inscription around its base. So uncommon valor was a common virtue as applied throughout the history of our Corps. We go on into Korea, places like the Chosin Reservoir, Hungnam, in Vietnam with all of those things, and it lasted war, the war that lasted so long. And our reputation, though, throughout all of these things and all these times and different places, our reputation today was founded by them through the years. And our reputation is on the founding of those people who were the greatest. And in our time, we have known that. I've seen tremendous changes in all of the time I have been living, but none has been more profound than how we have kept faith with all of this through the Marine Corps, and those of us who are so proud of that Marine Corps heritage. We will forever be grateful that we were able to serve in this Corps. And I think that we need to remember over and over again what our heritage is from the past. We literally have our reputation today on the greatness of those who went before us. The training in boot camp I mentioned, that's where it all starts. And the same attitude with officer training too, and pilot training. We're one unit, and that's the way it should be. I think the only thing to say is that we must keep this attitude alive. We have too many things these days that distract us, and too many divisions in Washington on not getting agreement, too much emphasis on me instead of what's best for the country. And the Marine Corps has always stood for what's best for the country in their commitment, and I'm very proud to have been a Marine. So, you know, we go through all of these things that have happened in the past, and we're so proud of those. And I just want to say that to all of you here tonight, thank you very, very much for this Lejeune Award. I would like to feel that it's not me. I'd like to feel it's being dedicated. I may be receiving it, but it actually goes for all these people that have given us the kind of heritage we have in this court. As long as we have that, we'll have the best military force in a package of anybody in this world. We can be very proud of that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Louis Beck very kindly flew us in tonight, and we have to fly back to Columbus yet tonight. So if you'll be so kind as to excuse us, we were able to land here at the air station, and so we're going down there to fly back to Columbus. Now, when I told General Amos this a little while ago, and he is going to make remarks also,